Hadley, good morning to you. Well, we've seen global finance chiefs sounding off on the prospects of a recession. First of all, the Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon said economic conditions are going to tighten meaningfully, with the Fed set to keep lifting interest rates in order to put a lid on hard-to-tame inflation. And those comments were echoed by the JP Morgan chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon, who also said that geopolitics surrounding Russia and Ukraine and the United States and China is equally, if not more, concerning the global outlook. Listen into some of their session yesterday.
Economic conditions, in my opinion, economic conditions are going to tighten meaningfully from here. I think in the United States, particularly in the last week or two, there's been a clear message from the Fed that they're going to get to the current path target of 4.5%, 4.75%, and then pause because there's a lag effect to all of this. But if they don't see real changes, labor is still very, very tight. They're obviously just playing with the demand side by tightening, but if they don't see real changes in behavior, my guess is they'll go further. And I think generally when you find yourself in an economic scenario like this where inflation is embedded, it's very hard to get out of it without a real economic slowdown.
I agree with David. They'll take a pause at one point. Conditions around the world to tighten. It's rational to take a pause because any 3 months doesn't matter that much. But American consumers, eventually the excess money they have is running out. That'll probably happen sometime mid-year next year. And then we'll know more about what's going on with oil and gas prices and all that kind of thing. So we'll find out.
So some pretty dire warnings there. And when it comes to the outlook for oil and gas prices, of course, this year's event comes during this escalating dispute between the United States and Saudi Arabia over that OPEC Plus decision to cut oil output. The Saudi Energy Minister, Prince Abdulaziz, also used his session on stage to defend those OPEC Plus production cuts in the face of some of these growing economic fears. Listen.
Everybody's talking about recession, and it's not just about recession, it's about how severe the recession might be. If we talk about the uncertainties and layers of uncertainties about what will happen to China zero COVID policy. And by the way, just 2 days ago, it was reconfirmed that China will continue with its own policy, which means that what the much talked about potential growth is probably will be still in waiting to happen. If we talk about the uncertainties that are being generated about sanctions, about caps and what have you, because we really don't know how it would play.
The energy minister there certainly doubling down on the OPEC decision to cut output. But at the same time, when it comes to the outlook for this fractured relationship that we see evolving between the United States and Saudi Arabia, we also heard from Saudi Arabia's Minister of Investment, Khalid Al-Faleh. He described it as a, quote, blip. But Jamie Dimon also says that he hopes these two countries are going to be able to work through it. Of course, senior Saudi officials have said over the past few hours that this is a relationship that goes far beyond just a simple dispute over oil, far more strategic, far more important into the future, Hadley. Unclear whether we're going to get a resolution anytime soon, but officials are really trying to talk it down at this stage.
No doubt about it. I mean, when you talk about friends in the region, who is the alternative to Riyadh? Tehran?